a chance to get in here real quick. And I'm going to tell you, this side profile view is not my best. Let me suck in a little bit more. All right, man, this is Jackson Uncensored with Clay Edwards. This is the Save Jackson podcast, the Clay Edwards Show, whatever I want to call it. Tonight, I'm joined by Steven Utroska with the Freedom Caucus Network.
State Freedom Caucus Network.
State Freedom Caucus Network. Let me get that right. Steven has been, well, we've been knowing each other for, I guess, about a year now.
Yep.
And you fill in for Mike every now and then, Mike Madison at WYAB. You were a host, a guest on there with him for a while.
We did a program every Thursday, an hour on a show every Thursday for about a year before that. So
yeah, so that's how I was introduced to you, and that's good stuff there. And you were with Americans for Prosperity initially?
I was, yep. For 2 years, I was at AFP, and I left there back in November and joined the State Freedom Caucus Network, and so I've been there since then.
So tell people, before we jump into the nuts and bolts of our conversation, like, what is the Freedom Caucus Network, the State Freedom Caucus Network?
Right. So the idea started out, so there is the U.S. House Freedom Caucus in Congress. They was started back in 2015 by people, Jim DeMint, Mark Meadows, and a handful of other, kind of, pretty popular conservatives, but hard, staunch conservatives weren't going to give it up.
Liberty-minded
folks, yep. And they realized that there was not a good platform, I guess, or of course they call it a caucus now, but there wasn't a good group of those guys working together. So they take a vote, and Jim DeMint says that him and Mark Meadows were friends, and they were they were both representatives in the U.S. House, and they were taking votes, and Mark Meadows would vote no on something, and Jim DeMint would vote yes on something, and then afterwards they'd get together and be like, hey, why'd you vote this way or whatever? And I'm like, oh man, okay, you should have told me that. And so it's basically just miscommunication between some of these guys, and so they said, we got to do something. We have to pack together to do something so that we can start voting together on these things, or we'll never win this war against the establishment. And so they came up, conceived this idea of the U.S. House Freedom Caucus. So it was launched back in 2015, and they started, growing and growing and growing. They don't publish the membership list of the House Freedom Caucus for strategic reasons, basically, because they don't want the leadership to know how many people are in it, how many votes they have on certain votes and things like that. So they don't publish it, but they're somewhere right around 40 now. So they grew. The original membership was 9. They grew from 9 to 40. And I tell people it's pretty good here in Mississippi. Mississippi Freedom Caucus started with 6. It's 6 out of 122 House members. They had 9 out of 435. So, when you're looking at numbers there, Mississippi House Freedom Caucus actually has a larger percentage than the U.S. House Freedom Caucus did when they started. But so they're kind of our parent organization, the U.S. House Freedom Caucus. So, of course, they launched, been very successful. Jim DeMint, when he left, he actually left the House and went to the Senate for 2 terms, and then or for 1 term. And then when he left Senate, he decided he wanted to start an organization to help be basically a think tank for the U.S. House Freedom Caucus. So he started Conservative Partnership Institute, and CPI basically helps launch other groups. And so a friend of mine, Andy Roth, was with Club for Growth, another large national conservative organization. He had actually started telling me about the idea a few years ago when he was at Club for Growth. He said, hey, I'm thinking about doing this, launching it kind of with Jim DeMint under CPI, the State Freedom Caucus Network. You guys have a Mississippi Freedom Caucus down in Mississippi. I'd like to learn more how you work at the state level to kind of almost mirror what the U.S. House Freedom Caucus is doing in D.C. We want to see how you're doing in the states, because we want to take the model that you guys have in Mississippi and spread that across the country in every state capital. And so, of course, I left AFP and, joined Andy once the State Freedom Caucus Network launched. They launched officially in December. And then Georgia was the first State Freedom Caucus to join the network as a member. Mississippi Freedom Caucus was the second State Freedom Caucus to join as a member. We now have 7 members, 7 State Freedom Caucuses across the country. We've got about 5 more that are in the queue to join the network before the end of the year. So we'll have somewhere around 12 by the end of the year. And then our goal is by the end of next year to have 20. So we're talking about, anybody that's listening that knows about Mississippi politics. You're talking about Dana Criswell, Steve Hopkins, Dan Eubanks, Joel Baumgar from, right here north of us in Madison. Brady Williamson is in Oxford. Chris Brown is up in the Tupelo, Amory area. I mean, so these are the guys making up. We also in Mississippi. So I'm a representative for the network, but Mississippi is at one of our members, and so I just help support them. I'm not paid by the Mississippi Freedom Caucus, but I certainly promote them. They also don't publish their membership list. They only publish their officers. So those that I have mentioned have been officers in the Freedom Caucus.
Yeah.
So you can look that up and see those, but we don't publish the list for the same strategic reason. So the leadership never knows how many we have.
So how many are there now? I mean, without naming the list, obviously.
Yeah. So we have, so I'm not going to tell you the number either. We have right now, there's 6 of them that have been published. There's 6 members that have been published. We have several more that are not published. We also have, and when I say we, I mean the caucus,
Sure.
So I'm not part of it officially,
Well,
but
I say we when I talk about Mississippi State football.
Yeah, there you go.
Clearly I'm not part of the team, but it's my team.
So, the Freedom Caucus is my team,
Yeah.
So they actually came out and endorsed a candidate who's running in a special election, House District 37 right now, David Chisholm. So he's a liberty-minded fighter for the Columbus area here in Mississippi. So his election will be November 8th, coinciding with the federal midterm election. So it's a special election he's filling in. When he wins, because I think that he will, it'll be public because he was endorsed by the caucus and running in the caucus or with their endorsement, he'll become a member too. So he'll be the newest member when he wins his election on November 8th. But Young Americans for Liberty is a great organization, national organization that I'm a big fan of. I've supported them for a long time. They're mostly college campuses. They weren't around when I was in college, but they're kind of from the Ron Paul Revolution started. They came out and endorsed David at the end of last week. So they'll be basically deploying college kids from all over the country in to help, campaign for him.
Well, we need that, man.
Oh, man. It's so.
I mean, and to go back just a little bit.
Yeah.
Just to tell people, this is the grassroots stuff we always talk about. We got, I think I've heard you say it, and I'm sure you've got it from somebody else too. You're never gonna change. If we're worried about Senate and House and this and that, man, if we can't change stuff at the grassroots level, it's going to do that 2 or 3 times. By the way, that's my dryer. I had the bright idea to dry a blanket instead of waiting until later. So my apologies.
Well, I was gonna, so I ignored it the first time.
Yeah,
and I thought actually it was my headphones, and you weren't making any movement. So I was like, maybe it is my headphones.
I was trying to no sell it.
Yeah, that's right. I'm going to keep rolling with it. We're used to that at the station. You get stuff coming in the background all the time. You just got to keep rolling with it. So I'm going to pretend I don't hear it. The listeners heard it. Man, it must be their sound system or something.
Well, somebody told me, it's like, if you make a mistake, don't even acknowledge it. Just keep pushing and going, which I'm not very good at that. I'm like, I don't want people to think I'm a complete idiot. I have my moments. Don't get me wrong. But every now and then I'm like, I didn't mean to say that.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's cool. So the college campuses, obviously, people mess with me a lot about, okay, why are you on TikTok? Why are you talking about TikTok and Instagram and all these things? You're supposed to be protesting all that. I don't want to get involved in echo chambers. I want to be where the next generation is, because I wish I'd been. I mean, my parents did a good job with me, I believe, as far as raising me as a conservative, raising me right, so to say. But I want to be where the younger generation is. Who do I have a chance of changing their mind and keeping them going down the right path? I don't really want to do the echo chamber thing. While I love my team and I'm glad we're all on the same team, I want to get people who may be on the fence.
Yeah, that's right.
The swing voter.
Right. And I mean, so Young Americans for Liberty, that's what they started for. They were there to get on college campuses to make sure these students who are completely indoctrinated by the woke left that are on college campuses, pretty much no matter what college campus you're on. But they started so that they could pull these kids in and teach them about Ron Paul's policies, about being a liberty-minded conservative Republican or, whatever. And so, I actually ran for a state house seat back in 2018. Young Americans for Liberty was just starting up this new initiative they had to help get liberty-minded people elected. And so I was the first one in Mississippi to get their endorsement, and they came in, and, college kids from all over, great kids. And that's all they want to do is make sure they get people elected. And it's so important. They realized it pretty much at the same time that Andy Roth with the network, the State Freedom Caucus Network, started realizing that, it's a difficult fight to win back our country.
Hold that thought.
Yep. I'm going.
This is why I didn't want to use my damn phone. I almost called my mom and said,
Is that your mom calling?
Yeah, sure enough.
So
sorry about that, folks.
Technical difficulties.
Using my phone tonight as the camera, and when your mom calls, it never fails.
So this is what it really is. So I'm filling in for Mike Madison now on the show. Mike's been gone for a couple weeks now. It'll probably be another couple weeks. So Clay is testing my ability to keep my composure with all these things jumping out at me. That's what it is.
Well, in the spirit of Halloween, this is like the boo. And,
yeah.
Like somebody trying to jump out from around the corner and scare you. But I mean, when you do these things live, there's no telling what you're going to run across. And that's one thing I've learned over the years. Just keep pushing forward.
Keep rolling.
And I don't want to use my iPad, but with this, so for the benefit of those who aren't paying attention, my camera is my phone. It's a wireless thing that I use where it'll stream to my computer and then through this Restream program. So I kind of just have to make it work. The phone is a much better camera than the iPad, and because the iPad will have a little lag. It's a little blurry and it's supposed to be top of the line. But as you know, you would think that with the iPad, it's huge. There should be no reason for the camera not to be any bigger than it is. I feel like I'm at a circus tonight, man. My apologies.
No, it's good. Look, so don't be fooled by all this fancy stuff you see in the camera. Behind that is an iPhone hooked up to a cord with dogs running around in Clay's living room.
Yeah, I mean, we've got it big in here. I'm actually going to fix one thing while we've already
so. Well, look, I'm going to keep talking and telling people about Young Americans for Liberty because I want them to know about this. So pretty much at the same time, YOW, as it's affectionately called, YOW, and for the network that I work for, the State Freedom Caucus Network, almost at the same time, they start realizing that, hey, we're not going to win this country back at the top. Winning in D.C. is, we've been fighting in D.C. We've been fighting politicians. It's such an uphill battle in D.C. So the better goal is not to win back the country at the top at D.C. is to win it at the state level. And so Young Americans for Liberty started saying, hey, we're going to put liberty-minded legislators in every capital. And they had like a 3-year goal of getting 250 of them elected, and they hit that goal, helping get that many elected. So they came in and my election helped. They did a phenomenal job. I made it into a runoff. I was in an open seat election. There was 5 of us in it. I made it into a runoff with another guy, and then he beat me in the runoff, which is, not what I was wanting, but it's just, politics. But they have continued to do that. They have pretty much all of our Freedom Caucus members here in Mississippi have been supported by YOW and helped in their reelections when they came up for reelection in 19. They're helping David Chisholm now, so hopefully helping him get elected, and he'll become another member of the Mississippi Freedom Caucus. But it's at the state level. And that's why, when I go on Mike's show or I, talk on any other show, most of what I talk about is state policy and state politics, because more of your life is decided by what happens in Jackson under the dome than it is in D.C. But 90% of what you hear and see, especially on media, is about what's happening in D.C. And all it is, D.C. is just a complete theater. I mean, everything they do up there is theatrics. You see the shouting matches between legislators, the House members yelling at each other. Well, off the air, when the camera turns off, they're going and having a beer together.
Yeah.
Now they've got to keep it up for their constituents back home. They got to say, hey, I'm fighting this leftist. And, the progressive is saying, oh, I'm fighting this, dirty capitalist, pig or whatever. And then off the air, they're making backroom deals.
Yeah. I mean, look, I do not play well with others when it comes to this Democrat. I can't. These people are my enemy.
Yeah.
I don't know. Did you grow up a wrestling fan?
Yeah, actually, I went to the Coliseum several times when I was a kid watching WCW when they came into town.
Do you remember the legendary Dusty Rhodes promo? It's referred to as the Hard Times promo. It's about Ric Flair brought hard times on Dusty Rhodes.
Yeah.
Democrats brought hard times on Clay Edwards, and I don't let them forget about it, brother.
Yeah, no,
There
I
ain't
hear
no
you.
backroom deals over here.
So,
Not that
yeah,
I'm a politician, but
it's
generally
hard to tell
speaking.
people on a podcast or on the radio when you see memes and try to describe it to them. But there's this meme that I really like that's got kind of a stick figure drawn of two people holding hands, and it says like Bob and Sally on it, and it says like, you can disagree and still be friends. Something. Be like Bob and Sally. Well, then some people took that and they rewrote it, and it says, well, Sally's a communist and I would never hold her, dirty pig hand or whatever, this is fake. And that's why they couldn't get two people, to actually take a picture and hold hands.
Stick figures.
Yeah, they got to do stick figures. You got to think these, communists, fascists, whatever they are, socialists, whatever they want to put themselves in a bucket for, people that want to control your life through using the government are not your friend.
Well, me and Mike Madison. So when we talk about Mike, we're talking about Mike Madison from WYAB, 9 to 11 a.m. Monday through Friday. He's on a sabbatical right now. But me and Mike did I did a segment with him not too long ago, and he always talks about he can't understand how people let politics ruin friendships and family. I'm like, well, it's easy.
Yeah.
Because as a conservative, I believe that if you're on the other side, your intent is to make my life miserable and hard, and you hate blue collar middle class America. So I don't take it personal in the sense that you're needling me. I take it that you hate America.
Yeah.
Well, and I have no room for you in my life, whether you're family, friend, or otherwise.
No, I take it pretty personal. I mean, because they want to take the money out of my pocket.
Sure.
And so that's what I tell people all the time. It's great. If you want to help people, that's great. Do it with your money.
Oh yeah.
Conspicuously, taking my money to use it, for whatever you think is the right thing to do helps me none, but it's taking food off the table for my family. So when you take money out of my pocket, that's taking food off my table. And I've got a wife and kids that I got to support. And so I take it very personal when people want to control my life and take the money that I've earned, not them, not the government.
Yeah. And just to clarify, when I said not take it personal, I was referring to, I don't think they're personally attacking Clay Edwards. I'm not speaking myself in third person, but they attacking my way of life.
Right. Yeah.
I don't think they woke up today and say, how can I piss off Clay? But they have figured out the way to do it by attacking my way of life.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And that's all they do. I mean, they're not only your way of life, but the American way of life of working hard, supporting your family, and, going home. And I tell people that all the time. The problem is so many people don't want to get involved in politics. Well, they don't have time to get involved in politics because that's what the average American does. The average American goes to work, they come home, they spend time with their family, they go to bed, they do it all over again the next day. They hit the weekend, they want to relax on Saturday, and then they go to church on Sunday. They don't have time to get involved. But because they don't get involved, there's people who are getting involved and want to spend time getting involved who are going to take away and destroy their way of life.
No, speaking of that, as elections get ready to come up, and I know school board's a little further away, I would be shocked if you talk about people who want to change the way of life and you start with the children.
Yeah.
I think I don't even care who you are right now. I don't care how conservative you are. I'm just at a point where you need to be uprooted if you're on school boards. We've got to start on this ground level and we got to change that. I know Ryland Thompson running up in Madison, and that's America First, and he's a great dude. I know him personally. Who else is going to do it? We need to change the seats I don't want to be insulting by calling that the lowest level because it's obviously very important. But the fact that nobody can name anybody on a school board should tell you that it may be an easy election for the right person to win.
Yeah.
If you decided you wanted to run for something, this may be the one.
Yeah.
I mean, I've even thought about it, and I'm a high school dropout.
You should.
But I think you need that other opinion in there. I want to be in there for the culture war part, not for the nuts and bolts of mathematics and what programs we're putting in.
Yeah. So there's a famous quote, and I can't remember the guy's name, but he basically said, you can't get the right people to run for office because the right people, the best of people, don't want to control their fellow man. But that's what a lot of politicians are and do is they get in that office because they want to control things. They want to get in and pass policies that are going to control your life. And that's what Jackson's doing right now.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot lately. That the people who end up at the top of politics are people who are the worst of the worst, even the guys on our side, because they were willing to do what it took
Yeah.
to get to the top of politics.
That's right.
And there's some truth to that. But look, I'm not electing a preacher. I'm not electing the Pope. I'm not electing a life coach. I'm electing a politician. I need you to be dirty just on my side.
Yeah, well,
I mean, that may sound bad. Nobody may want to hear that, but at the end of the day, it is what it is.
this is what I tell people all the time. I say, elect someone who will do what they actually say they're going to do when they run. Yeah, I don't care. Look, actually, there's some great Democrats in Jackson, and I'll tell you this. I've said it before, and so I don't mind saying it. The Democrats in the Mississippi legislature,
yes,
the Democrats there are more honest than the Republicans are, and they have a better foundation of their belief system than the Republicans do.
What's my guy's name? I'm drawing a blank. He was on Jackson City Council. He's there in the on the side of Fred Shanks and them. Anyway, great dude.
Yeah.
Great dude. He was Marine, flew on Air Force. What's the helicopter? Marine One. Was a Marine One with Bill Clinton and I can't believe it. He's going to kick my butt for not remembering his name, but I didn't think I was going to say his name. So, but yeah, there are some good folks there. I mean, to the point that I know you've heard the whole thing about doing with the Jackson water that the state representatives from Jackson were trying to get the money from the state, and the mayor's office called them all up, raising 7 levels of hell.
Yeah. Well, I want politicians that will be principled, even if I don't agree with their principles. And that's how the Democrats are. I don't agree with 99.9% of what they believe in, but they stick to their principles. So when a Democrat says he's going to do something, he generally does it, and I can believe him and stick to it. And so I'm not going, of course I'm a registered lobbyist because I lobby. But when I go to the Capitol, usually, I talk to Democrats, but I'm not asking them to change their vote because I know where they stand. I know what their principles say and what they're going to do and where their vote's going to be. The Republicans are like throwing a dart. They say one thing, they vote completely opposite to that, and you never know where they're going to be.
Kim Wade says it best. When Democrats have control, they make generational changes. When Republicans, we're just trying to be the brakes. We just want to slow things down. I'm tired of slowing things down. I want to make generational. I want things to go back so far right that it breaks somebody's neck.
Yeah.
In the process.
Well, I mean, look, the right now the Republicans, we've got a supermajority Republicans in both the House and the Senate. So basically, that means we have a 3/5 majority in the House of Republicans and a 2/3 in the Senate. With 2/3, you can do absolutely anything you want. You can suspend the rules. You can make up new rules, on the spur.
Well, I'm glad you said
you can do anything you want.
You've got a quote that says, when everybody's Republican, nobody's Republican.
Yeah.
I've heard you say it multiple times. Explain that.
Yeah, so it was funny. One time when I said that, I was at dinner in Florida, and there was myself and Secretary of State Michael Watson was there, and we just happened to be sitting at the dinner together, the same table together. It was there's about, I don't know, 60 or 70 people in this dinner. We just happened to be sitting at the table at the same time together. And I said that. I said, look, in Mississippi, when everybody's a Republican, no one's a Republican. And he kind of looked at me and was like, well, what about me? And I was like, look, percentages wise, when the percentage gets so low, nobody's a Republican. So it was kind of funny. He thought I was calling him out, and I was, to an extent. But Michael Watson's, for the most part, a pretty good guy. He was when he was in the Senate.
I like Michael.
And I think he's doing a good job as Secretary of State. But this is the thing. Everybody all of a sudden saw the change happening in Mississippi. The Senate had already become a majority. It was a simple majority of Republicans for, a few terms. In 2011, the House, everybody saw it coming that the House was about to flip over to Republican majority. And so all of a sudden you had all these Democrats to swap parties. You had all these guys who locally would have run as Democrats were swapping over to run as Republicans. They didn't change their principles. They weren't changing what they wanted. They
didn't wake up one morning and finally find a Bible and a gun.
Yeah, that's right. They weren't conservatives overnight. They never were, never have been. But when they saw that everybody was moving that way to becoming a Republican, everybody just moved that way to become a Republican. Their principles didn't change. Their votes didn't change. The policies didn't change, but they all just became Republicans. And so when you look at places like Arizona that's got a one-person majority of Republicans in their House, and they just passed the most expansive school choice program in the country, those Republicans are fighting because they have to or they won't win. Our Republicans, they've already won as far as taking over. They've taken everything over. There's no one to push them to actually be conservatives.
Well, it comes in the Freedom Caucus.
Right. So in comes the Freedom Caucus. So that's what we're trying to do. The network is trying to launch Freedom Caucuses across the country. Mississippi Freedom Caucus was already a caucus set up. So they joined as a member of the network. And so I'm here to support them and, support other Freedom Caucuses across the country. But mostly since I'm here in Mississippi, I spend a lot of my time with the Mississippi Freedom Caucus. And they're tearing things up, man. And that's what it's about. Staying principled. Those guys are principled 100% of the time, no matter what. We don't always agree. We get in arguments. I get in there with the Freedom Caucus guys. And we start talking about policy and we have disagreements, and that's fine. But when we agree on something, we stick to it and vote that way 100% of the time, every time, on what our principles are. And we just go in there and use the system. We have become experts in the parliamentary rules of the legislature. So we know what rules we can use, when we can use them to stop bad policies and try to get past good policies.
So let me play devil's advocate a little bit here. One of the things I hear, the negatives from other folks, is they won't play ball.
Yeah.
And it's hard.
You know what that means? We won't compromise.
Absolutely. And it's hard to get things done with them because they won't play ball, and it can end up
compromise.
It affects their districts negatively because nobody wants to work with them
because we won't compromise.
I get it. Yeah. But I mean,
that's right. No, I mean, that's true. So, and when you hear them say, they're not playing nice with other districts, or their people back home don't like them because they're not getting things, what they're basically saying though is they have decided to fight against taxes. That's their number one thing is taxes. We're fighting taxes. We'll never vote for a tax increase. And so when it comes time for local and private taxes, which is, too much to try to explain on a short podcast what that means, but basically your hotel, local, restaurant, hotel taxes, things like that, they've said we're not going to vote for those. And so historically had been that if the
1% sales tax in Jackson,
that's right,
1% sales tax in Jackson and these other places like that.
So the 1% sales tax in Jackson is actually a beast of its own policy wise. That's different than anything else. But like in Brandon, you've got a 3%. Or I guess I think it's a 2%. So when you go out to the restaurants, 9% tax instead of 7%.
Is it?
Yeah. So
I guess I've never paid attention.
Yeah, 7%. I think it's only 9%. So you can raise it up to 3% on restaurants or served food, served alcohol, and then hotels.
Tourism.
That's right, tourism tax. So technically, the technical name for that is a local and private tax. So you can do. So I think Jackson actually has a 3% on it, but they actually have an additional 1% local sales tax. That Jackson is the only one in the entire state that has that, and it's a special set aside just for Jackson. So it's a little bit different. But the local and privates, the Mississippi Freedom Caucus has said we don't vote for them. We're not going to vote for them. That's a tax increase. We're not voting for them. So they vote against everybody's. Well, then people take that personally, like, well, you voted against mine. Well, the politician, what they really want is they want to be able to get that money for their local, councilman, their mayor. They're trying to send that money back to them so that those local governments have more of your money. They're taking more of your money out so that they can use that for whatever they want to use it for. So then it has to be approved by the legislature. And so if you're not voting for it, all of a sudden you're not playing along. You're not voting for my taxes when I need them. Like, no, I'm a conservative. I said, when I ran for an election, when I ran and my constituents voted me in and elected me, I told them I would never vote for a tax increase. And that's what I'm going to do every time, vote against a tax increase. So when you're trying to increase this local and private tax, I'm going to vote against it. So it's the thing. They say they don't play nice and their people back home don't like them. They say it all the time. Oh, those DeSoto guys. DeSoto gets a really bad rap because there's 3 members of the Mississippi Freedom Caucus that are from there. DeSoto.
That's the one that always comes up.
Yeah, DeSoto always comes up because those are, their people back home don't even like them. Well, all 3 of those guys have won re-election. So they're not in their first term. They've gone through their first term, and we're doing the exact same thing they're doing now, staying principled and not compromising, and the people voted them back in. Now, it's very important if you stay principled and you are not going to compromise, you have to be open and honest about what you're voting for. So when you take a hard vote, Come out and say why you took a hard vote. Tell people why you stood principled. People may say, you know what, I don't agree with that, but I appreciate your stance and you not wavering on your principles. People would much rather you stay principled than take a vote that's against your principles, even if that's what they believe in.
Well, look, and I can respect that because that's the path that I've taken to get to where I'm at with radio and this platform. And is I'm not going to be the most articulate. I don't have the deepest vocabulary, any of that stuff, but I'm very principled.
Yep.
And I really don't waver on. I don't waver on that. There's ancillary things that I can have my mind changed on, but
yeah,
core values, they're not going nowhere. I am who I am, for better or for worse, and that's got me to where I'm at is being firm. I mean, I'm gonna piss some people off, and that's fine. They're not my friends anyway. They're not my demo, you know.
Yeah,
and
well,
I mean, appreciate the core value.
Dana Criswell, so he's the current chairman. Steve Hopkins was the chairman, the first chairman of the caucus. He rolled off his term, and Dana Criswell became chairman now. He says this all the time. He says, I didn't go to Jackson to make friends. I went to Jackson to do what I believe was the right thing to do based on my values and to represent the people that voted me in. And so I hear people all the time say, well, what if your people back home, called you up and said, hey, I know this is against your principle, but we believe you should vote this way and you need to represent us.
We're going to give you that big shiny bridge you want.
Yeah, we're your constituents and we're asking you to vote for this tax and we want this tax. I know you said you weren't going to vote for this tax when we elected you, but we want it now. You need to represent us. You need to be a representative of the people, and we the people are saying vote for this tax. Fine, vote him out next time.
Yeah.
You get to speak your voice at election time. So if he runs on the platform of never raising taxes, never voting for a tax, and he wins, that's what he needs to go do. That's when he hears from the people about what they want, is when election time comes and he says, this is what I believe in. I won't waver on this, vote for me or not. If they vote for him, then he hears the voice of the people saying, we want you based on your principles and your values. So that's what he needs to do. So if you get 100 people calling you before a vote from your district and say, hey, we know you said you would never vote for a tax, but you need to vote for this tax. This is why. These are the great things it's going to do. And he just says, no, I can't do for that. Well, then you get another 100 people call you. Well, all of a sudden you're like, well, I'm hearing from a lot of my constituency. So most politicians in Jackson would say, and there's this 10 times rule, and I talk about this all the time too. The 10 times rule, if you get 2 people call you, it's almost like getting 20 people call you. If you get 100 people call you, that's like half your district calling you, And so they say, man, I've heard from half my district now, and they all want me to vote for this tax, but I campaign saying I never vote for a tax, but they want me to vote for this tax. I better do it. One, it's, they're probably lying about the number, because of the 10 times rule. But the other thing is, no, stick to your principles. Don't do what the people say in the moment. Stick to your principles. If you ran on a platform of saying you would never vote for taxes, don't vote for taxes. If they don't agree with the vote you made, they'll vote you out at election time.
Well, what about the other half that assume you're a man of your word and they don't have to call you because that's what you ran on and they put their faith in you?
That's right. 100%. That's right. Yeah, they're not going to call you because they knew that you were a man of your word. And when they voted for you, the 51% at least, you have to get 50% plus 1 vote to win. So at least 50% plus 1 voted for you because of what you said you were going to do. And so you just stick to that.
Yeah, no, I like it. Again, it's going to be hard to make everybody happy because that's not what you're there to do.
Right.
Stick by what you voted for. So I'm glad that you went down this road with talking about the taxes and what the caucus does. This is a Jackson-based show. I got to get to it. Let's talk about the Jackson water.
Yep.
And should the state step in and help? To me, the answer is absolutely not. Should the state step in and help? Should Mississippi burden some of the cost because it's the capital? What does the caucus think?
Yeah, so I can't speak for the caucus because I'm not a representative of the caucus. For the network, I work for the network. But so my personal belief is, and I don't know that the network would necessarily have a position on this anyway. So my personal belief is
he's here on behalf of himself too tonight.
I am
not the network, but you're involved, and it is what it is.
So my personal belief is that if you vote for socialist and you live in socialism, you should not be surprised. So people in Venezuela voted for socialists. Venezuela was a very prosperous country. They voted in socialists, and now they live in socialism, and they're eating the zoo animals. because they have nothing to eat.
Wanted that UBI and
So
else.
you have people in Jackson that have, self-proclaimed Marxist, have voted in Marxist, and now they're surprised when they're living in a third world country like Venezuela with socialism. They don't have water to drink. The zoo, hopefully they won't break into the zoo and start eating zoo animals, but the zoo hadn't been good for years. So and I just joke about the zoo, but they don't have water infrastructure. The garbage is not getting picked up. They just cut a last minute deal to get garbage pick up. You're
and
talking
it's
about
shady as hell to begin with.
Look, you're talking about, at the very elemental things that a municipality is supposed to provide. If they can't provide that, why do you need a municipality to take all your taxes?
Policing, water, basic infrastructure. Jackson has nothing to hang its hat on.
Right. None of the
Nothing.
basic things that they're supposed to provide as a municipality. Look, one of the things when so I went through this, so I lived down in Hattiesburg in Lamar County, outside of the city limits. I lived down there for 6 years, and that's where I ran for office. And the city was trying to annex the area that I was living in. So nobody lives in the county hoping that the city annexes them. Everybody lives in the county because they want to be outside of the city limits.
I grew up in Byram and right on the edge, and Jackson and Byram went round and round and round and round. And finally my neighborhood got given to Jackson as a compromise.
Right.
So to your point,
yeah.
I 100% agree.
One of the things you have to do as a municipality, as a city, when you want to annex a new area, is there's a list of like 7 things you have to prove to the judge that you are going to provide for this area better than the services that they're already getting. And so you have to provide, garbage, sewage, water, education, all these things you have to prove that you're going to provide those. So again, you look at that and say, well, so if you're in the city of Jackson and you wanted to zone yourself, I don't know what the term for that is, but reverse annex yourself, take yourself out of the city of Jackson. Logically, I don't know if that's true, but logically to me, maybe you'd have to prove the same things that they have to prove to annex you. So to say, hey, if we left the city of Jackson, would we have better water? Probably. Especially if you went into Rankin County, better water, better garbage, better schools. All the essential services you would have better by not being in the city of Jackson. If that's true, why do you have a municipality? For them to annex, they have to prove all those things. So you would think that, if you live in the city and they aren't providing those essential things that the government has decided to be a municipality, you have to provide those essential things. If you can't do that better than what they would be without it, maybe you shouldn't be a city.
Yeah, Chip Matthews, and I love Chip, and he says a lot of crazy things, but one of the things he said that really makes a lot of sense to me is, and I don't know if it'll ever happen, but maybe more so than the state doing a takeover of the city, what if you shrink Jackson's footprint? And, and you start letting some of these rural areas go back into the county, or let Clinton take part of Jackson.
I don't know if Hines County's any better than Jackson, is it?
No, it would have to be. It would have to be something again like Ridgeland or Madison take North Jackson, County Line Road.
Yeah,
and some other. You're going to have to minimize the footprint, and they're kind of doing that from the inside out with the Capital City Improvement District.
Yeah,
and once they get their own judges and stuff over there, it's going to be the real deal. I'm a big fan of what they're doing there, and Tate Reeves, as much as he possibly could, has got me back in the camp because of the work they've done with the Jackson Water and with the Capital City Improvement District. Somebody brought up a good point the other day. We've gone back and forth. Who would run against Tate? Who is running against Tate? And somebody said to me, who's going to get to the right of Tate right now?
Nobody.
I don't think you can.
Nobody.
My Fred Shank said, he's having his Haley Barber Katrina moment here with the Jackson Water and all that. And I don't think you can get to the right of him.
No, well, I don't think
you try it.
I don't think his, during COVID, certainly he had some executive orders that I didn't agree with.
Touche.
But I don't think that there's any politician in Mississippi that's even remotely in a position where they could run against Tate that has ever been able to get right of Tate. Philip Gunn, Speaker of the House, he has looked at and has, certainly gone down the political landscape of wanting to run against Tate Reeves. And actually it has, I think, benefited the Mississippi House because he is trying to get right of Tate and he can't, but it's bringing him further to the right than I think he would be otherwise. So no, I don't think you're going to beat Tate. I don't think there's anybody that can beat Tate. And I'm one of those people ask me all the time, do you support so-and-so? I'm like, well, they're a politician. So if they're voting for the right policy, I'm supporting them. When they're voting against the wrong policy, I'm not supporting them. I'm very policy based, so I don't throw my name behind anybody wholesale, because they're always going to do something stupid along the way, that I'm not going to support. I very much supported Tate Reeves during his gubernatorial election back in 2019. He had been one of the best, if not the best, lieutenant governors we've had in my lifetime in Mississippi. He wasn't perfect then either. There was things I disagreed with him when he did there, but he was by far the best I had ever seen in my lifetime as a lieutenant governor. And so I had all the hopes in the world that he would continue doing that during his first term as governor. And if you look at the people that were running against him, there wasn't a whole lot there. So
and then Jim Hood on the Democrat side,
yeah,
that was a negative.
So I supported him, and I thought he was going to do good things. But you got to remember, like in his first year, so he was elected in 19. Took term office in January 2020, and then there was a couple massive tornadoes hit Mississippi in 2020, early 2020. There was a hurricane that hit the coast. Not a real significant hurricane, but a hurricane that hit the coast where he declared a state emergency. And then in March we hit COVID. So I mean, the guy had a tough time.
Also what fell in his time period was the flag change.
100%.
And for better or for worse, which I was for change. I just want to be on the record. I was for changing the flag. I'd had no connection to that. We have a representative government, and we sent representatives there, and that's what they voted to do. And for better or worse, that's what happened.
Yeah. So that's a long story, and we could go into the complicated policy issue of the flag change that I didn't support the way they did things. There was a lot of people that didn't, and really more on a parliamentary. And so when I say parliamentary, that's just the fancy word for like the rules of the House and the rules of the Senate. The way they did things with the flag change, I didn't agree with.
I don't like the flag that we ended up with. I would have liked to have had more say so.
Yeah, no, and I actually, I just stayed out of the flag fight. I publicly didn't say anything. I was with Americans for Prosperity at that time. I didn't say anything at all. AFP certainly didn't care about the flag, which way it went, one way or the other. Like I said, personally, I was against the way they did things. I think that they potentially broke some laws and rules in the way they did it, but nobody cared. When you have a supermajority of Republicans, you got 2/3 votes, you can do anything you want.
Do you think anybody lost their seat or is going to lose their seat over it?
Yeah, I do. I do think there's going to be I think there's some challengers that are coming up that I've talked to, challengers for some incumbents, and I don't like many of the incumbents, not because of the flag. I care less about the flag,
Sure.
but based on other policies that they've done, or them just being lackluster representatives and just there to be there, and they take up a seat and vote however somebody tells them to vote. I think there's going to be a surprising amount of people that will run against incumbents on that very topic and win.
Yeah, if I was going to run against Tate, kind of bouncing back a little bit here, what I would run on is who closed churches, who said that you were a important or non-important business, essential or non-essential business. I would remind everybody of that. I would stroll the video of that black pastor that they trotted out there and basically had to bribe him to shut his church down. There's a lot of things that happened during COVID that if I was going to run against him, these are the things that I would use against him. And, but you can't live in the past. And I kind of how I feel about the flag.
Well, I'll tell you, voters have short memories about things, but for some reason, the flag has hit a chord with many rural voters that they do not forget and have not forgotten. And, so I'm in the grassroots arena. I go out and talk to a lot of people, all over the state. And let me tell you, the flag is one of those things that they have not forgotten. And it's going to be interesting to see. But if I was running against an incumbent that had voted to change the flag, that would be on everything I sent out, because I think that you'll get. There's so many voters that are single issue voters, and I think that single issue right there will get you 40 or 42% of the constituency of a lot of rural areas.
Yeah. They've made up for it in some places with their tax cuts, but I don't want to award somebody for giving me the money they stole back.
Right. Well, and it was a tax cut, but I don't know if you heard the show this morning. I was talking with Douglas Carswell on the Mike Masson show this morning, and we kind of discussed the income tax a little bit. So it was a reduction of your income tax, and the reduction, the plan is a 4-year plan, and over 4 years it steps down the income tax, and it's not a complete elimination. It just steps it down from basically 5% to, I can't remember the exact number, 3.5%, I think. But as it steps down, that's over 4 years it steps down. It's not immediate. In that time period, the revenue impact to the state of Mississippi is a little over $400 million. Well, we're, July 1st of the fiscal year. So we're, July, August, September, October, we're 4 months into the new fiscal year, and we're $240 million above estimates this year alone. So that tax cut that they're all patting themselves on the back for, the Freedom Caucus were highly, highly and very loudly fighting for a complete tax elimination. And we got this little cut. And of course, all the politicians are saying it's the biggest tax cut in Mississippi history, and they're patting themselves on the back for it. And it's certainly a step in the right direction. Don't get me wrong. I'm glad that it happened. It's better than nothing. But it took so much political capital under the dome to get this tax cut. And what they will shave off state revenues after 4 years implementation, they just made back in 4 months. Half of it, at least half of it back in 4 months, what they're going to give. So they're giving you your money back over a 4-year time period. They're going to cut your taxes down, but the amount of revenue they just made from it, they made up in 4 months. So it seems like, again, they're all going, when they run for reelection, that will be on their postcard. Every mailer that they send out, every, Facebook post or tweet in support of their campaign is going to be that I helped, voted for and supported the largest tax cut in Mississippi history. But it's kind of a sham, really.
Yeah. I mean, again, like I said, I'll take it. I'll absolutely take it. But it's kind of like, I'm going to shift gears a little bit here. It's kind of like this Brett Favre, Phil Bryant thing.
Yeah.
And the welfare money. The state stole that money from me.
Yeah.
I don't really care who stole it from them.
Yeah.
I don't care. So I know everybody says, oh, well, it's corruption. If it was you, you'd be in jail. And you're absolutely right. I would be, but I'm just having a hard time getting fired up fighting for the guy that stole the money from me.
Yeah.
That being the state.
Right.
Sorry, I just don't care. And then if we're talking about the welfare side of it, there's a lot. I'm not a fan of that. So if it kept it from getting in certain people's hands, well, then so be it. That's life in the big city, as Kim Wade would say.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No doubt. Yeah. I really haven't followed that. I get a lot of people, especially on the national side, that ask me, what's going on down there? Because they see all the publicity nationally about it. I'm like, man, I don't know. Mississippi is the most corrupt state in the country, and I can't remember who does that, who does those numbers and how they come up with it. But there's one of the outlets that does, a corruption chart, and Mississippi and Louisiana are always fighting each other for the most corrupt in the country. Yeah. And it's like, that's just another day here in Mississippi. If you spend time in the Capitol in Jackson, spend a couple of days up there during session. And anybody that has never been up there, feel free to reach out to me. I'm there almost every day during session, and I'd love to show you around and let you, introduce you to some of the crooked politicians up there. But I mean, that's just how it is. The backroom deals are made all the time. Money is spent, all the time wrongly for what it was originally designed for. They originally stole it from you, Clay, because they wanted to give it to the poor people. But then some corrupt politicians in Mississippi spent it for a volleyball stadium. So what? I'm not saying that's not, but
that's my thought process on it. First, this is going to sound bad. I'm just not a fan of the poor people. Not the ones that refuse to do better for themselves. The oppressed for a living folks. Yeah. I'm not a fan, and I don't really care if they got their welfare money took from them or not.
Yeah. Well, they're getting their money.
Yeah. They're still getting it. So it's a moot point.
I mean, that money, that money wasn't directly going to them anyways. It was supposed to be going to programming for them. It was supposed to be going to, you could use it for facilities or something like that to, facilitate programs.
I have a bigger problem with it with a big chunk of it that went to Super Talk. That probably, to me, now that seems like a real waste of damn money.
Yeah, no, I think
not just because they're a competitive talk radio station, but just period. It seems for PSAs and advertising for what? Unreal. That's a waste of money.
Yeah. Oh, no doubt. So John Polk is a senator down in the Hattiesburg area. and I'm not supporting him or saying anything, because he's he and I go back and forth on a lot of things. But one of the things that he has been fighting for in Jackson for a long time is, he says politicians in office cannot use tax dollars to promote themselves during an election year, only during an election year. So 3 years, 3 years out of every term, the first 3 years of a 4-year term, they can spend all the tax dollars they want. And, you hear it, ag commissioner, AG,
I
they
love
all
it.
do
I
it.
like Andy, but that's the first person that comes to mind.
Man.
He has made a rock star of himself, as would I, if I had the unlimited budget to promote myself.
Right.
You would see Clay Edwards everywhere.
Well, I think that's funny. You go to the pump, he's got the sticker that says, has his name on it everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, so, they use state tax dollars to promote their own name is really what they're doing now. They put it under public service announcement. They're saying something to the state, but nobody hears that. They just hear Andy Gibson.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we're not beating on Andy, but he certainly uses.
He's the best at it.
He loves to use money for it. Lynn Fitch was doing the same thing. She kept using a bunch of money for it. David McRae's bad about doing it too, as a treasurer, but they all spend that money. And Senator John Polk tried to introduce a bill that basically just said you can't do that during an election year, because it becomes even increasingly obvious what you're doing with that money during an election year. You're just promoting yourself so that everybody can hear you, and then they go on and vote for you during an election year. He has introduced that bill, I think, at least 4 out of the last 5 years, and it has never once, I think it has made it out of committee once or twice. It has never even made it up for a floor vote.
Of course not.
And he's not saying you can't do it altogether.
Yeah. Just
on election year. Just an election year, you can't promote yourself using tax dollars, and they won't vote it in.
Look, man, I'll tell you, it's one of the things I love about having a show at WYAB and how committed to his position that Matt Wysocki, the owner of the station, is. I could sell ads to the folks down at the fairgrounds to promote stuff, and other state folks that I've gotten in well with. They would sponsor stuff, other cities that do concerts, this, that, and the other. We don't take a penny of taxpayer money to promote anything on our radio station. And that's why we're allowed to get on there and take Mike Guest to task and everybody else. And we're allowed to say the things we did. We were allowed to go against COVID and the vaccine and all these other things because we don't take a penny from them. All of our money is 100% funded by small businesses and our listeners, who are just as important part of that cog of that wheel, because they support the small businesses that support us. No, I was talking with Matt today about it, and I was asking him, how well received a lot of their sponsorships are. And he said small businesses by far love it, because he said every time they go to one of their sponsors and eat lunch or whatever. And of course, Matt likes to, support his sponsors. There you go. Well, I'm going to use them as an example here in just a second. A1 Gear Auto.
So, but those sponsors, those small businesses see the return on that. That's why they keep advertising on it, because, and I say it a lot of times when I get on the show, when I'm filling in for Mike, is I say, hey, go out and support these, because we can't do what we do on the radio unless you continue to support these small businesses and let them know that you heard the radio program, and heard their name on the show. Because if you're not going and supporting them, then they're not going to buy ads. And if they're not buying ads, then we're not taking government money. And so, Matt plays like the little ad that he runs and says, WYAB is 100% sponsored by, small businesses. We don't take a dime from the government. I'll tell you, Super Talk, again, who is a competitor. I think the last number I saw was like $8 million that they're taking annually by doing these PSA announcements.
Well, I heard a PSA back during peak COVID of some of their announcers or their host promoting go out and get vaccinated. Yeah. And how much were they paid for that? You know what I mean? Because I'm sure they weren't doing it out of the goodness of their hearts. And I'm not just picking on Super Talk, because it's going on all over the place. But that's where it's going on at here locally.
And they are easy to pick on.
Well, they are. They are. And look, they are what they are. And I just love that we were able to stand firm. Yeah. And that we have an owner like Matt. One of the last of the Mohicans when it comes to an independent talk radio owner that's not controlled by anybody. It's a one-station family. Yeah. And
well, that's like so many businesses and corporations you see, the small grocer has gone the wayside, with big groceries coming in, Walmart stuff. And I think as a capitalist, I think that's great, because Walmart has been able to revolutionize things and get prices lower than any other grocery store in the history of man has ever been able to do. They have incredible systems, the way they ship stuff out and all that. Amazon's coming in now and doing that.
I love watching logistics.
But, yeah.
I enjoy logistics. It's interesting.
So as these big businesses grow, that's just that's part of our free market that we have. But for someone in a radio show or in the industry, in the radio industry, it's just like that. You get all these iHeart stations that are taken over. You got the Super Talks of the world. That Super Talk, I don't know, I've got 15 stations that they've taken over in Mississippi, so they cover all of Mississippi or whatever.
You can basically ride the whole state without having to change the dial.
Right, that's right. Yeah, and but WYAB is the last of the Mohican almost in that industry, just like the local grocer is, just like all the other local small businesses that you have. And that's why Matt's so passionate, I think, about supporting those. And it gives us the freedom to say basically whatever we want to say
FCC
within.
guidelines.
Yeah, that's right. If we and I don't cuss a lot, so it's not something I have to worry about. But some of the hosts do more so outside of this radio. And then, of course, we always have people on calls in, call-ins or whatever. Try sneaking. So we always have that dump button we can always hit, to try to take that out before it goes out over the air. But basically, we have free reign to say what we want, and we speak the truth. And I think people enjoy that.
Oh, look, absolutely. Because I don't know that I could conform to corporate radio. I'm just not that guy.
Yeah.
What I do is very pirate radio. And I'm allowed to, in my year and a half, almost 2 years there, January will be February 1st will be 2 years. Started the first Monday in February. And Matt has never pulled me to the side and said, "Hey, man, you can't say that." I think the only time he ever said anything to me was we were having a reception issue one day, and somebody had texted in and said that they couldn't pick the radio, pick it up, and we repeated that on air, and he didn't like that. He's like, "Hey, don't talk about the reception issue," and he'd probably be mad at me now for saying it. But it was just one of those days. And he's like, never do that. But as far as the content of the show, he is a huge supporter of letting the guest, the host, to their own detriment sometimes, do whatever they want. And he does not, we don't have meetings there, as you know. There's no all staff sales meeting type. Here's the direction we're going. That's why, there were some people in the guest campaign, and I'm friends with a lot of these people that, they were talking about the station and saying, "Oh, you got this station out there that's just damned and determined to go against Michael. They just don't like Michael." And we never had a conversation about being against guest. It was just, hey, these are the things we're all upset about. And we're the resistance. Yeah. And the resistance is typically going to go against the mainstream political party guy.
Yeah. So I actually filled in for Mike for about a week, right leading up to the election.
When I was saying Mike, I'm referring to Michael Guest.
Right. No, I understand.
For everybody out there.
Yeah. So I filled in for Mike Madison on his show, basically the week leading up to the Republican primaries here in Mississippi. And Michael Guest hadn't been on WYAB at all. And so I actually reached out. I've got a lot of friends that are supporters of Michael Guest. And, again, I kind of stayed out of the, because of me working for the network, I stayed out of publicly endorsing anybody or doing anything publicly about the election. But I really wanted to, show both sides. And so I have friends that were working with Guest or, in his campaign. And so I called him, talked to him, and I actually talked to one of his campaign guys. And I said, "Hey, look, I'm filling in for Mike Madison. Be glad to have you on the show. Like, I'm going to have Michael Cassidy on the show too, because he's already paid for time spots. Mm-hmm. And I just happen to be filling in for Mike Madison." And I was like, "So he's going to be on it too." I was like, "But I'd love to have you on. You just speak your word." It's like, "I'm not trying to bring you on to hammer you. I'm not going to bring you. This isn't a trap or anything." I was like, "I literally want people, the voters, to hear from you too on WYAB." I said, "You should look at it, if nothing else, as going into the lion's den." I said, "And people respect you more for it if you go into somewhere where you think people aren't going to like you and you stand your ground and talk about your principles." And unfortunately, he declined. But I wanted him on for that reason.
So now I say all that to say this. After all that, I was asked if I would be interested in coming to the office and having a meeting. And I did. And we sat down for 2 hours, and he had a pad and a pen just like this. And he legitimately looked me across the table, eye to eye. He said, "I was given some bad advice." And then we talked for 2 hours about the things that had salt in my vagina.
Yeah.
That why, because I probably fit the bill of a Mike Guest supporter out here in Rankin County. Like, if Clay Edwards is off the reservation, how many other people are?
Sure.
And I will give him 100% credit here. He's supposed to come on the show at some point. That's neither here nor there. But they have followed up on those concerns I had.
Good.
And talked to me, going out of the way to re-communicate with me and say, here's where we're at on these things. And you know what? What else can you ask for?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I was given an audience, and they have followed up with me on my concerns. I don't know what else you can ask for. He's my representative.
Right.
I want a seat at the table.
Yeah.
We should all want a seat at the table.
No, I think it's good. I mean, so, when I was with AFP, when I think he had been in about 6 months or so at that time, and I hadn't, sat down with him and met with him. So I reached out to him and I went and met with him too. And, basically just told him, said, hey, I'm not asking for anything. Of course, I was a lobbyist, but I wasn't asking for anything. I wasn't doing any federal lobbying. I was only state lobbying. So I wasn't asking for anything. I said, hey, I just want to sit down and talk with you. We had a great conversation. And at the end of it, he was like, so are you, when I met with him, I didn't say, hey, I'm not asking for for anything. So we went in, we just had a good conversation. At the end of it, he was like, so is there something that you're like here to ask for? I was like, no, man, I just want to meet with you and talk with you, get to know you, because I want to know who you are. I lived here, in Rankin County. So I was like, you're my representative too. I was like, not only do I work for this organization, but you're my representative, and I want to get to know you so that when I do need something, or I do want to ask you for something, I'm not just calling on you when I need something. And so I had a good conversation with him, and I have met with him since then. But I hope that he goes up there. I hope he goes up there. I hope he takes good advice, better advice than he took last time. And I hope he kills it.
Now, one of the things we talked to him about was doing away with this cookie cutter politician vibe that looks like he could be replaced by anybody in a suit with family in a promo picture. Go to your Facebook, hit the live button, and turn the camera on you and tell people what just happened on the floor. He took that advice, and he's been using his Facebook Live and communicating with people and letting people get to know this, because he's a very nice guy.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not nearly as bland as the campaign would have had you think he was.
Right.
I mean, he's an outspoken, colorful, well-spoken dude. Obviously, he's well-spoken. I mean, he's a very intelligent guy. But you would have just thought it was very whitey-tighty.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's not the guy that I've got to know. This
is the thing. If you look like you're very cookie cutter and easy to replace, you will be.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's what he saw. I mean, I don't think that, policy. So I look at policy. I mean, and I'm a policy, nerd when it comes to that. So I look at what they voted for, what they've supported, what they've done. Very few voters are doing that.
Yeah.
But also looked at what Michael Cassidy was supporting and saying and doing. And, the first time I ever met Michael Cassidy was back about 6 months before the election. It was, pretty soon after he had announced, and I just happened to be in an event that he was at. So I went up and introduced myself to him. And I'll say he was not very impressive when I met him. When I met him for the first time, I started asking him some policy questions, and he was unaware of some of the things I was asking him. He didn't know, what things meant. So it just told me he was green. He did, he's not into policy, doesn't know, as much as I would like somebody to know if I was voting for them. Michael Guest has been around a long time. He was much more, knowledgeable about policy issues and areas, but he's not voting that way. He's not voting the way I would want him to. And I'll say, early on, I told you about, we launched the State Freedom Caucus Network because of the U.S. House Freedom Caucus. Mississippi has 0 U.S. House Freedom Caucus members in Congress. We have none.
It's just mind-boggling.
I would love for Michael Guest to vote the way he needs to vote to become a U.S. House Freedom Caucus member. It's by invitation only. You don't just say, hey, I want to join, and they let you join. It's by invitation only. But you get an invitation when you start voting the right way.
Yeah, I mean, I know Cassidy spoke about wanting to be, and he was saying all the right things. And look, and I told Michael Guest this, and this is no knock at Michael Cassidy. He was very generous to me. And I probably told him this. My vote for him, honestly, was a protest vote against what I thought Guest wasn't talking about. Guest could have just came on with my show, Kim's show, Jameson's show, Mike's show, anybody's show, and say, hey, here's the deal with the January 6th thing. If nothing else, y'all would just shut up about it.
Yeah.
Here is the deal. And I know that there was there was a commission and a panel, whatever it was. There was the thing going on now wasn't the same thing. It didn't matter.
Yeah, that's right.
And some of his stuff is bad timing too. Gas high as hell. The country's going to shit. Excuse my language. Just everything.
This is uncensored, man. I think
It
you can
is.
say that. We're not on the radio.
It is uncensored. No beep here. So it was bad timing for him.
Well, so this
and
was
a good
his
primary.
thing.
Tune him up a little bit.
Yeah, no. Well, that's the thing I told some of his people that were working with him during his campaign is number one rule of campaigns is you either run unopposed or scared. He didn't run either. He had an opponent, and he wasn't running scared. He thought, oh, who's this Michael Cassidy guy? He's got no money. He's a nobody. Nobody's going to vote for him. I can slide through this thing into my reelection. And so, that's campaign 101. So you go take any campaign course at a university, and they're going to tell you, if you have an opponent, you have to run like he's the best opponent you've ever had. Michael Guest didn't do that. The other thing Michael Guest didn't do that hurt him severely was, again, like I talked about earlier with our Mississippi House Freedom Caucus members, when they take a vote that their constituency do not agree with, they have to be open and honest about why they took the vote. So Michael Guest, later on, after so much talk had been during the campaign of him voting for the January 6th commission, he started trying to explain himself. You can't wait till everybody already has their own narrative.
Yeah.
Somebody else pushed the narrative. Mm-hmm. Then he's trying to do cleanup. If when he takes a hard vote like January 6th commission, when he took a vote like that, he needs to come back immediately and say, let me tell you why I took that vote. This wasn't the full-on blown commission. This was just the first investigative panel or whatever it was.
Somebody would have a Republican representative on the panel. It wasn't all Democrats.
He was hunt. Right. He came out and said, look,
we got Liz Cheney.
Yeah. He came out and said, look, I'm a man of law and order. I believe in the judicial system, basically. And I wanted that. I wanted to, if Donald Trump was, innocent, let him be proven innocent. If he's guilty, let him be proven guilty. So I wanted to be able to at least put into order an investigation so that we could see before we called the full on blown panel or whatever it was, or the commission. So if he would have said that early on, when he took the vote, he went on Facebook Live and said, look, I just took a hard vote. Let me tell you, based on my principles, why I took this vote. If this turns into anything other than that, I will vote against it. And you may have had people say, I don't agree with that. You should have shut it down. You should have shut it down from the very beginning. They can say they disagree with him based on his principles, but if he voted for based on his principle, they'll at least respect that he did it. But when you don't tell anybody, when you're not verbal to your constituency of why you voted for something, and I'm talking about if it's big enough, you need to do town halls. Mm-hmm. So the Mississippi Freedom Caucus guys voted against teacher pay raise. You want to talk about some blowback.
Yeah.
Those guys were getting hammered every which way from their district because they voted against a teacher pay raise. But they immediately went to social media, immediately put out press release, immediately put letters to the editor in their papers, immediately went back home over the weekends and did town halls, talking to people, meeting with people, and telling them why they voted against the teacher pay raise. And they said, we voted against teacher pay raise, one, because it's unmerit based. We were giving the worst of the worst teachers the same pay raise of the best. We believe in a free market system. We believe in actually paying people what they're worth. And you're talking about giving the best of the best teachers only as much raise as you're giving the worst of the worst. So all you're going to do is make the best of the best teachers mad, and you're going to make the worst of the worst teachers paid just as much as the best.
Look,
there's a whole slew of other reasons why they did it, but
I took an unpopular stance through COVID and all that I realized that a lot of our teachers are as bad as a lot of our nurses, and they don't deserve a raise. Now there's a lot that do. And of course nobody ever hears that part.
Right.
They just hear you think nurses suck and you think teachers don't deserve a pay raise. And that's not what I said.
Right.
It's like I always say, if I'm not talking to you, I'm not talking to you. But there's a lot of people out there that I would rather, instead of a teacher get a $4,000 pay raise, get an $8,000 pay raise.
For the ones that deserve it.
And keep or even more. I don't think there should be a glass ceiling.
Right.
I think you should be able to earn as much as you possibly can based on your pay plan, on your job performance, right. Just like me in sales.
Yeah. So, that's the thing. You ask some good teachers, and we all know very good teachers. Mm-hmm. Go talk to the good teachers that you know that they're busting their rump every day trying to make sure that their students get the best education possible. You go ask those teachers, say, do you know any bad teachers? Every one of them is going to say, oh, yeah, I know bad teachers. Like, do they work as hard as you? No, they don't work as hard as me. I'm up here before sunlight, here after dark. I go home. I spend time with my family. Once my kids go to bed, I'm grading papers. I get up before my kids wake up, grading papers, doing lesson plans, doing whatever. Like, well, that bad teacher, are they doing any of that? No, they're not doing any of that. Like, well, do you understand that you were busting it and they just got the same pay raise as you?
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
It's got to be terrible.
So there's lots of reasons, and there were other reasons too why the teacher pay raise was bad policy. It was just bad policy. And the Mississippi Freedom Caucus tried in committee to offer amendments to make it better, and they were all thrown out. Nobody wanted to, consider them. Nobody wanted to rock the boat. Nobody wanted to even bring up the bad side of why this bill was, a bad bill. But the Mississippi Freedom Caucus guys voted against it. I went down this rabbit hole all to say that when they took a hard vote, knowing that they would get backlash from it from their constituents, what did they do? They immediately went on a campaign, a PR campaign, telling everybody why they voted for it. So all of a sudden you had all these teachers that were mad at them because they voted against the raise for them. And then they said, but we believe you deserved a better raise and that bad teacher didn't deserve any raise. And now all of a sudden you have teachers that were saying, well, I still don't agree with it, but I understand your position and why you voted that way. And I appreciate you being principled.
You should not be you should not be able to fail upwards.
Right. So they,
so carry that for 1 second. I don't want to end this, but I've got to use the restroom.
Oh man.
Go 60 seconds without.
Okay. So look, and I'm talking to the crowd now. So that's my thing. That has always been my thing is we want politicians who are principled no matter what, because if their principles I don't agree with, that's fine. I don't have to agree with everything. I mentioned earlier, Democrats. I don't agree with the Democrats the majority of the time at the Capitol, but I know where they stand every time because, believe it or not, Democrats at the Capitol, the Mississippi State Capitol, under the dome, are more principled than the Republicans are. If they stay principled, I don't have to fight them over anything. The Republicans who aren't principled, who vote for however leadership tells them to vote, you never know which way they're going to go. And it's the same thing. So I went down this rabbit hole because of Michael Guest. Again, I think Michael Guest, one of his downfalls was he didn't talk about the bad votes. So he let the people, his constituents who weren't hearing from him, push the narrative of why they thought he voted for something bad. And so then again, he had all these things come out. He had, other people pushing the narrative. He didn't do a good job of getting in front of the narrative that the public is pushing against him or about him. He didn't run his first, the up to the runoff of the Republican primary. He wasn't running. He was doing a few Politico events, but he really wasn't, getting out, talking to the people. And again, I mentioned earlier, people, the average voters, working, going home, spending time with their family, going to church on Sunday, and they go and do it all over again. If you want to reach the people, you got to find them where the people are. You can't go to these Politico events. You can't go to the the Rankin County breakfast. You can't go to the Grip and Grin in Madison County and think that you're going to reach the voters. And that's about all Michael Guest did.
Yep.
So I think he got a wake up call. I think that he realized very quickly all the things he had done wrong. And I hope that he does. And based on what you're saying and you talking to him, it seems like he's realized what he's got to do. I hope that leads into him not only doing the right things as far as what he needs to do to get reelected again in 24, but I hope that also means that he starts voting the right way. And that's what's more important. I would be more than happy to sit down with Michael Guest and give him a path to becoming a House Freedom Caucus member. But it means he's got to vote the right way. That means he can't vote how leadership tells him to vote every time. He can't just vote with the pack every time. He's got to stand apart. He's got to sometimes, not play ball and not compromise. Yeah.
Make people mad every now and then.
You got to make people mad every now and then. But you know what? Some of the House Freedom Caucus, some of the most the loudest House Freedom Caucus, Lauren Boebert, Chip Roy out of Texas is a firecracker, and people love him. I mean, those guys are tearing it up, and people love them.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think you and I, or maybe me and Mike and you, we discussed the DeSantis model,
Yeah.
and the Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene and these kind of firebrands.
So DeSantis was actually one of the founding members of the U.S. House Freedom Caucus as well when he was in Congress.
Very good stuff there. I was not aware of that. Like my problem with Tate and Guest, and for example, is Tate especially. He just polls and polls, and it's like he's running 2 weeks late.
Yeah.
Every time he decides to take a strong stance on something, it's like he has to do 2 weeks worth of polling to decide if people want him to take that stance instead of just firing off.
Yeah.
And maybe that's a negative to some people, but for me, I don't need you to poll and craft a narrative. I want to know exactly what you think the day that it's front page news.
That's right.
Not 2 weeks later when you're deciding, okay, it's going to be popular if I do this.
Right. I mean, even during COVID, so you're looking at, Greg Abbott in Texas, was kind of ahead of the pack. DeSantis certainly was. Kristi Noem, who, by the way, is not even close to being a conservative. I know that's going to hurt some people's feelings, but she is not a conservative. We have a Freedom Caucus in South Dakota that's part of the network, and they constantly fight Kristi Noem on her leftist, woke agenda, but she plays that very good conservative sweetheart on national news. And
we were talking about her being potential for a VP and this and that. I would rather have Tulsi Gabbard than I would.
No kidding.
Her.
And I've got a lot of bad things to say about Tulsi.
Indeed.
I mean, she does, she gets right on, on a number of things, but she's just as bad. Thing. But I mean, you had, just looking at it though, from the surface, you had Greg Abbott, you had Kristi Noem, and you had DeSantis, who all three were, in the media, owning the media because of basically just opening things up.
Well, people forget that DeSantis actually closed Florida. Literally closed the borders of Florida. I mean, and he gets forgiven for that, or he gets forgotten because of once he looked at the science and the data and says, okay, here's how we're going to do things.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, and I think people do forget that because look, when something happens, when something unknown happens, sometimes you have to take time to sit there and think about it. Now, I would side on on liberty and saying, well, let's just let everybody keep doing whatever they're doing until we figure this thing out, not lock them down until we figure it out. But either way, those three governors basically came out very early on and said, no, we're not playing ball with this anymore. Let's open the state back up and get our economy rolling. Well, Tate Reeves could have been right there with them. Tate Reeves had everything in his power that he could have been on national news right there along with them. But no, he waited till, 6 weeks after anybody else did anything before he made a decision to do anything.
Well, didn't he have to quarantine at the very beginning of it because he'd been out of the country at a soccer tournament or something? And then the first 2 weeks, everybody's like, where's Tate? And apparently he'd been quarantined, if my memory serves me correctly.
Yeah, I don't
But no reason
that.
You can't pick up the phone and do exactly what we're doing now.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
But you would at least think that these guys would say, man, this seems to be working really well for DeSantis. Maybe I should, even if I don't all the way mean it, maybe try that.
Yeah.
Even if it's not Tate's clearly not a DeSantis when it comes to firecracker personality.
Yeah.
But you could say, people like that. Now he is doing more of it now, with some of the things he's doing. His actions are speaking louder than his words. Now, I loved what he said in Hattiesburg the other day about any day's a good day not to be in Jackson.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, why would it not be?
Twitter blew up over that too. And I thought, I don't know why, but on Twitter, I don't have that many followers on Twitter. But for some reason, I always see all these progressive wokes in Mississippi, lambasting what the last conservative did. And not that we have that many true conservatives in Mississippi, but American Conservative Union rates us as a purple state. But I mean, they were lambasting him over saying that. And I'm like, 90% of these people who are, giving him a hard time about saying he didn't want to be in Jackson, you also don't live in Jackson. You chose not to live in Jackson because you wanted fresh water, you wanted garbage pickup. You don't want the crazy high taxes. I mean, to live in Hinds County or the city of Jackson, you go buy a new car, your license plate's going to cost you more than your first
higher
payment
than anywhere else in the state, and you get less in return for it than anywhere.
Well, what you get is a bunch of potholes.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's crazy that nobody wants to live in Jackson.
No, if you live in Jackson right now, you're stuck. You're not going to go spend $300,000-$400,000 on a house in Eastover or Leftover because you have other options. If
Yeah.
you can go spend $250,000 plus on a house, you have other options.
Yeah.
Why in God's name would you go do it? And I do run into the occasional person, and God bless them. They're like, well, I want to be an agent of change. And I was like, don't do it.
Yeah.
You're not going to be that agent of change.
Yeah.
You can't.
So I had a friend of mine that
There's not enough of you.
I graduated at Ole Miss with, and he was originally from Memphis, but he moved down here for a job after we graduated, and he lived in Jackson for a few years. And that was his, when he first moved down to Jackson, he was like, man, I love this Fondren area. Like we're going to be part of the revitalization of, kind of North Jackson, the Fondren area. And he thought it was cool. And he bought a house for like, $90,000. And it was, I bought a house out here in Rankin County, and my house was about $45,000 more than his. And his was twice the house mine was. And I was like, man, you got to start looking at things. Like if you're able to buy a house that much cheaper than mine, there's probably a reason for it. And so he ended up living there about 4 years. And his house was broke into 2 or 3 times. His car was broke into. He finally got to where he left his car doors unlocked.
To not have to break for windows.
So they're not breaking windows out. He had a good security system. And so he was, he worked downtown. So he would get an alert on his security, on his phone that somebody's breaking into his house again. He'd go down there, and JPD was pulling somebody out of a window, climbing through. And this guy, this one time, at least the guy was armed, had a gun on him, and the JPD officer was literally pulling him out of the window. He finally said, he was married, and when he started having children, he said, we can't live here. No, we're going to do this. So he moved to Madison.
Yeah, look what happened to Megan West and Ben Allen's son, and that's just one example. And I mention her because she's a high profile person,
right?
I mean, they don't discriminate in Jackson. They will absolutely rob and kill and violate anybody. Knock on wood, man. I've never had my house broke into in my time in Jackson, but that would feel like the most violating thing as far as possessions go. Outside of, God forbid, your wife be raped or killed or something like that. I mean, that's obviously the worst nuclear option there, but just not feeling like somebody violated your house while you're not there, and this should be just a way of life. No, it shouldn't.
Yeah, well,
it ain't the cost to play in the game.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have that big of a draw to want to live anywhere that I would sacrifice the safety of me and my family to live there.
I have Jackson, Mississippi tattooed on my arm, and I caught the first bus out of that son of a bitch.
Yeah.
I waited to the very end. I always joke around. I cut the lights off when I left. As far as conservatives still in Jackson, there's a few. My dad, mom, and Kingfish is still there. Kim Wade's still there, and I think I named all of them.
Yeah.
On one hand, with a finger left, of people that are conservatives and still there.
Yeah, Robert Kennedy. Do you know Robert?
No.
Okay, yeah, he's around some of our circles, so he's still there, and he's one of the old timers. He wants to stay there, and he wants to better Jackson. But at some point, you gotta you either got to be the captain going down with the ship, or you gotta bail out. And
self-preservation after a point, when you realize that the people in charge, when there is no hope.
Yeah,
I mean, people can say whatever. Oh, well, you're giving up. There's always hope. There's not. Yeah. Not short of a state takeover. There is no hope for Jackson.
Circling back to that state takeover, we mentioned that. I don't think my tax dollars should go to try to support their bad decisions for so long.
Try to save Jackson.
Yeah, I'm not a save Jackson kind of guy.
Yeah.
I don't, let Jackson figure its own out. Sure. And I'm not actually one, there's a lot of guys, I've got, I've got conservative friends that live in Jackson, in Fondren area, other areas, the nicer parts of Jackson, that want to save Jackson. They think that we need a very vibrant capital city for our state.
Wow.
That's required. That without a vibrant capital city, the entire state suffers. I don't believe that.
People always talk about the arts. The arts just produce a bunch of liberals.
Yeah.
That have this. They're the reason that we've gotten into this, and clearly not all the arts, but catch all here. The music. It's all just buildings.
Yeah.
You can move buildings. You can build new buildings. They ain't got to be these big monolithic ordeals that cost us no telling how much money in upkeep every year.
Yeah.
Go get one of these abandoned Walmart, Sam's Clubs, something like that. Throw all the legislators in there. They can still get the same stuff done without all the pomp and circumstance.
Yeah,
you can move the capital. It ain't that hard.
Oh, well, I mean, I just don't think
benefit.
I don't think that's what's, it doesn't matter. People aren't going to move here because they want a vibrant capital city. People are going to move here Why people will move into the state if it has lower taxes, lower regulations on businesses. They have less red tape to start and run a business. You have good areas to live in with less crime. That's why clean water, that's why people are going to move here, not because of a vibrant capital city.
No, people that say that are looking for a hustle.
Yeah.
Like, how can I benefit from the vibrant capital city?
Yeah.
And that's my thought process on that. I don't know. Look, it is what it is with Jackson. Obviously, my whole platform was based on Save Jackson, but I was referring to empty buildings. It started out as an urban exploration page. Like I would go and walk through these abandoned buildings. It was like save the building, save my memories of growing up here. It wasn't, and now it's save yourself from Jackson. But it's never been about, I think we should invest a bunch of tax dollars into Jackson.
Yeah.
I would like to see the community that constantly talks about Jackson versus everybody and black on this and black on that. Well, go black on something.
Yeah.
I mean, just go invest into your community. I mean, I get it. The black owned thing, and not to drag you into a racial thing at all. I've always been a supporter of the black owned concept, because to me, what they're saying is, especially in their communities, is American owned.
Sure.
Because a lot of their communities have been bought out by foreigners and all that run the gas stations and the stores and this, that, and the other. And they're, at least maybe I'm wrong. I've had this conversation with a few of them and they tell me I'm not wrong, but that's on an individual basis. They're really saying American owned, not so much black owned, but it's kind of how they say American owned. Like our demographic says American owned.
Yeah. Yeah. I just thought about, your sticker says Save Jackson. You can change that to say Save Yourself from Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like one of the movies, one of the Wayans Brothers movies I saw had a stop sign. It was in the hood and had a stop sign, and somebody had written on it, "I wouldn't stop if I were you."
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's pretty much it. But yeah, man, like I said, I grew up in Rankin County, lived down in Lamar County for 6 years. When I worked there in Hattiesburg, I've always been, a county in Lamar County, Rankin County are very similar in their makeup of people, and being kind of outside of that big city, has everything you need in the county. So I born and raised, basically here in Rankin County. I'll probably live here in Rankin County unless something calls me out. But if Rankin County becomes Jackson,
bye.
I'll be glad to leave.
If I'll leave Jackson, I'll damn sure leave Rankin County. I was in Jackson for 42 years. I'm 45. I'm 45. I've been out here for a little. March will be 2 years, or March was 2 years. But either way,
I'm just glad to see you come to Rankin County instead of Madison County. We're a little bit better over here.
Now, look, Madison's never been my thing. I mean, it's nice out there. There's a bunch of houses, but if I was going to live somewhere, Rankin County, I tell you what, I grew up with the Shankses, and I was talking to Doug, Fred's dad, and Sim's dad too. Shout out to Sims, working for the Capitol Police, actually helping to save Jackson.
Yeah.
I was talking the very first person I interviewed when I started doing this was Mr. Doug. Whenever to his house, sit down, we just told war stories, about when he was commissioner of Jackson and all that. And I said, man, what is the place around here nowadays that reminds you the most of South Jackson circa 1989? He said, right here in Brandon, Mississippi. And that stuck. So when the opportunity came up to finally leave Jackson, hashtag, this is where I wanted to be. And I started in Crossgates, and it reminded me of that South Jackson neighborhood before Democrat death culture took over. And it still does out here. I go places. I know people. It has to be what it was like if I had been 40 in 1989 in South Jackson.
Yeah.
And everybody knows everybody. It's got a little Mayberry vibe to it, but with the way the downtown is, but it's big enough that you're not always up in each other's business.
Yeah.
And I love it out here. And I think the mayor's done a great job. I think everybody out here, Sheriff Ron Bailey done a great job. I'm not coming to nitpicking, like when a California voter is moving to Texas, I'm not going to Jackson up there, Brandon.
Yeah, please don't.
You know what I'm saying? I'm here because they did a much better job of politic in this place than the place I came from did.
Yeah.
I'm not going to come over here and screw it up.
Yeah, no, I really like Brandon. I mean, so I actually grew up in the 047 Brandon.
Yeah.
And so when it was 042 then, when I grew up, I forgot what time it changed. Or sometime maybe when I was in high school, they started 047. They split the zip code.
Mm-hmm. It's a little more transient over there. nowadays than it, especially
Yeah.
in the old Fannin area.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I don't mean that as a bad thing necessarily. It's just, it's a little different vibe over there. And to me, it's kind of the Reservoir Fondren.
Yeah.
Without the bad crime. And again, I mean that as a compliment.
Yeah.
More of a conservative
Fondren. I live over here in 042 now.
Mm-hmm.
So I like it over here. I mean, one thing about Brandon that's nice is you can jump on the interstate, get to anywhere. It's so easy to jump on the interstate, hit 55. You want to go north. You want to, man, I got a lot of friends moving out to North Madison, the Gluckstadt area. Man, that is not where I want to be.
No. And if it's I think they finally got the money to do the 55 expansion out there. That's going to be a disaster for the foreseeable future.
We finally got 49 fixed. So.
I know. Look, I was working on 49 when that started, and it put a lot of places out of business.
Yeah.
I mean, not, most small businesses, contrary to what Democrats believe, are run week to week, month to month, if they're really lucky.
Yeah.
They cannot take body blow after body blow. That's why I see people talking shit about Babalu didn't shut down because of the water. Well, it damn sure didn't help.
Yeah.
What do you mean they didn't shut it? You had to add $500 a day to clean ice over 65 days a year. Do the math.
Yep.
I would gladly take a $500 a day pay raise.
Yeah. So I went to meet a representative down for breakfast. It's been a couple weeks ago, and went and met him. We were going to meet at the farmer's market, right there by the fairgrounds where they do it. Well, it's supposed to
market.
Yeah, the flea market.
Yeah.
It's supposed to open at 7 a.m. And so I was there at 7 a.m. to meet him, and we could see people working in there, but they were banging on the door. They wouldn't open it. And so we finally said, well, let's just go down to the Waffle House. So we went down to the Waffle House on High Street, and literally walked in, and they said, what would you like to drink? I said, well, I'll take, water and coffee. They said, well, we only have bottled water. I said, yeah, no, that's fine. And they came back and said, well, actually, we're out of bottled water too. I was like, would you like a soft drink? I was like, I guess, what do you have? They said, we have Diet Coke or Sprite. Canned. I was like, all right.
I didn't realize the Waffle House was still open down there, man.
Oh, yeah.
But good. I mean, look, when they closed the one on McDowell, that was the very first picture I ever posted of Save Jackson. Save Jackson was a page I had called Jackson Miss Promo. And after I got out of the nightclub business, I had this page that I used to promote my nightclub, and I had it sat there for 3 years without a single post on it, but it had about 3,000 people on it. I said, man, I don't know if I want to post this on my personal page. Let me just post a picture of this Waffle House here. And it got like 500 shares. I'd never had nothing get shared 500 times. I started posting a few more pictures, and that's where I said, I'm going to change the name to Save Jackson. Because I'd rather people not know it's me. And anyway, the closed Waffle House was the first thing that I posted a picture of. And it's like, shit, if Waffle House closes, it's bad, bro.
Yeah. So have you heard this thing with Waffle House? Waffle House,
the hurricane
storm
stuff.
Yeah, that's right. So they're like they have so much talking about. We're talking about like logistics of businesses. Waffle House, their logistics are so good, and they have like full-time meteorologists on staff at corporate Waffle House that are looking at these things, and they're so much better than a lot of the news media outlets, meteorologists, that literally those guys will watch, like Weather Channel will watch Waffle House to see how bad it's going to be.
Well, like your state EOCs and stuff, your MEMAs of other states, they will lean on the Waffle House people and say, okay, as far as like boots on ground, what's it like there? Is there power? Blah, blah, blah. They lean a lot into the Waffle House. I know a girl named Beth. I went to church with her and did the Celebrate Recovery stuff with her. She was a part of Waffle House's disaster team where they would fly into the areas.
Yeah.
And she was a higher up, and she ran a store here. I mean, like legit, like GM, district manager, but she was a waitress on the disaster things, or cook, or whatever they needed her to do. They'd jump on and they'd fly to wherever hurricanes and natural disasters went. And I thought that needs to be a documentary one day about that. Cause Waffle House has got there's some cool little documentaries made by people like me and you, just average people, but somebody should really do a true documentary about Waffle House and the good that they do. And I think people's perception of Waffle House would change. They
have like a whole fleet of food trucks too, that they go into a disaster area. So like, even if their Waffle House building is swept away, they'll bring their food trucks in and give out free food out of their food trucks. Yeah. To disaster areas, was pretty cool.
It is. And it's another Southern tradition, started right there in Atlanta. of
Yep.
all places. You
I'm
know,
a fan of
Chick-fil-A,
Waffle House.
Chick-fil-A and Waffle House both started in that middle Atlanta area.
Yeah, and another pitch for Brandon. We have 2 Waffle Houses if you're interested.
We do, and look, and honestly, unless you catch it right after a concert at the amphitheater, neither one are ever so packed you can't.
Yeah.
And I'm very warm natured, so I like it cold. They keep the air frigid, and that's so people won't sit there and hang out all night. But tricks on them. I will hang out in there all night because I love it freezing cold.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, look, I love it out here. I'm glad that I got talked into coming out here, and Jackson has become this huge postcard for don't move here. You would think that the people that worked for the city are actually the Convention and Visitors Bureau for the surrounding areas. And we'll see what happens, man.
Yeah.
I just don't see it getting any better, especially when you hear about the corruption. I mean, look at the garbage stuff, and we could go on and on all night about it, but we're just kind of dog chasing our tail here. Democrats bad. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, but I mean, they just keep finding new and creative ways. I said this on my show the other day. It's like, let's look at this. Okay, let's turn to the page. What haven't we screwed up yet?
Yeah. So our police, we can't get anybody to come to our police, join our police force. The guys that we have may be great, but they're so understaffed. We're not doing a good job there. We don't have water. We don't have garbage. We don't have schools. Our taxes are outrageous.
The Hinds County judicial system, look what they did with Anthony Fox, the cop that they got sitting in jail for murder. And neither a whole nother conversation, but nothing says, hey, police, you don't want to come work here.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, what do they have? What drives people to want to go to Jackson?
Nothing. I mean, it ain't schools. It's nothing. I've had this conversation. I don't know how the fact that this mayor won re-election on the fact that he's done the complete opposite of what would be considered a good job on every single important issue other than just being black for a living. I'd be embarrassed if I was black.
He had like seven opponents or something like that, did he?
Yeah.
How many did he have? I mean, he had a slew of them.
It was a lot of them.
And he overwhelmingly won. I don't even, it wasn't like
3%.
Yeah. Wasn't anybody even close.
3%. You know, they had the Black Votes Matter machine behind them. And when people hear me, they say, well, you sure talk about black people a lot. Well, black people talk about themselves a lot and their blackness. So I don't have a problem. They use it all the time. I don't have a problem acknowledging it.
Well, Black Lives Matter is a Marxist organization.
Yep.
The mayor is a Marxist. I mean, self-proclaimed. I mean, he's a Marxist, so it makes sense that they would come and back him.
You know, Candace Owens' documentary called The Greatest Lie Ever Told about the BLM comes out tomorrow on the Daily Wire Plus, and I've been paying $15 a month for no telling how long waiting it to come out. And I'd like to support people who support the things I like, so I don't mind paying it. But it comes out tomorrow, and I highly recommend everybody that has an opportunity to watch it is pay the $15, even if it ain't but for 1 month.
Yeah,
and you're going to be boondoggled even at how much of that money went to LGBTQ, LMNOP, Marxist organizations, and not a penny of it went to inner city black organization, went to Drag Queen, Happy Hour, and all that stuff. I mean, damn, that matters to me. You know, if it was meant to help the black community, like legitimately rebuild black businesses, create black businesses, man, I'd be all for it. But that's not what they're doing with it. They're pushing their agenda. Well, brother, I really appreciate you coming over tonight. And open invitation. You don't live 5 minutes from me. We can do this more often. We can do it on the radio whenever you want to.
We'll see how many downloads there are. If there aren't many downloads, then we'll know
So we're doing it live, and I can't see while we're live how many people are watching. But where this will do well is the rewatches and the people who were able to watch it on their time. And hey, I apologize for the dogs.
Oh man,
for the phone. This is the difference in being a one-man army, doing it live and versus a Joe Rogan that has a producer and it's pre-recorded. They can edit things out. It's live radio, baby. It's only rock and roll.
That's right.
All right, Steven, tell people how they can find you on social.
Yeah, fine. So the best place to find me is just libertysteven.com. So Steven's with a V, libertysteven.com. And from there, you can find more information about me, but you can also find all my social medias, Facebook, Twitter, the such, and you can reach out to me there. But follow me. You can also catch me on WYAB 103.9 from 9 to 11. I'm filling in for the Mike Madison show for at least the foreseeable future until we hear back from Mike. Mike's gone MIA for the time being. Yeah,
Mike has been doing just for people that do want to know, Mike is he's
Insurance
adjuster
yeah.
for like roofing and for her insurance companies in disaster areas. And when you have a disaster the size of Ian, that's going to have somebody like Mike preoccupied. We wish him the best. I hope he makes a ton of money.
Yeah, no, I do too. I think he's, I really haven't talked to him in a couple of weeks, so I hope he's doing well.
Yeah, the 9 to 11 time slot's in great shape, and look, we appreciate everybody. I know it's Tuesday night; it's getting late. Everybody's got work tomorrow. Danny says, "Thank you everybody that commented too." We didn't really get into your comments tonight, but they haven't gone unseen. I appreciate everybody. I saw that we have Brian Flowers. Running for Benny's seat.
Yeah.
He's in there tonight. Danny White, some other folks that I know. Just shout out to everybody in there. Appreciate y'all. And look, we will be doing this more often. I just can't commit to telling you an exact time and night all the time. When you do live radio every day, it's hard to commit to doing live streaming every night.
Yep.
So, all right, y'all stay safe, stay blessed, and be sure to hit share on this wherever. And the podcast will be available here shortly before you wake up in the morning. The audio only podcast will be available too. Stay safe. Peace.